Everybody.
Hi, Lauren.
So we didn't
Hi,
do the
Lauren.
gallery.
Hi.
I just did.
Hi.
I just switched around to see everyone.
I don't know where it
Very
is.
good.
What's this green thing?
Okay. What is this green?
What's that?
Don't touch.
Is that a harp?
Which thing are we looking at?
It's a giant string thing.
Oh, Neil's.
Neil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like an alien.
Kathy.
I don't know what that is.
What is it? Whatever.
Good. All right. How is everybody doing?
Okay.
Before I mute, just a general check.
Okay.
Everybody's full. I hope safe.
She gave her a
Oh, Josie, I can't.
It's in my hand.
All right. Well, at this point, I'm gonna mute everybody. Give me. Whoa. Okay. We'll get you back. Don't worry. Okay. It's great to see you. It's great to have our wonderful student cantor Lauren next to me, and it's great to be able to celebrate Shabbat with all of you. And as I think most of you know at this point, will be my last Shabbat before going on paternity leave. So as a word of just introduction, normally I try to have this often nowhere near me during services, but as you can imagine at the moment, I actually have to keep this quite close by. While it is very unlikely that there will be any kind of need for me to move or maneuver during this service, there's always a small chance. So Cantor Lauren is well prepared in the worst case scenario. If I wave to you in this kind of way, you know where it is that I'm going. But at the moment, things are good. Lou is good. Baby is good. All the things seem to be in place. So I get to enjoy your company for one more Shabbat. And I'm really looking forward to this. And certainly coming into this Shabbat for all sorts of reasons with an orientation of gratitude. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get a little further into the service. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'll switch it over to speaker view. Hopefully you can see me. And we're going to light our Shabbat candles. So you're welcome to join me at home if you have a set yourself. And we're on page 120 to offer our blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Okay, and with that, we'll turn it back over to Cantor Lauren, who's going to start us off with an opening song.
Yidu et Adonai besimcha, Yidu et Adonai besimcha, bo lefana birnana, fana birnana. Yidu et Adonai besimcha, Yidu et Adonai besimcha, bo lefana birnana, fana birnana. Yananai, 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 yananai. Nine, 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 nine. Yidu et Adonai besimcha, Yidu et Adonai besimcha, bo lefana birnana, fana birnana. Yidu et Adonai besimcha, Yidu et Adonai besimcha, bo lefana birnana, fana birnana.
And now we'll turn to page 130 as we begin Kabbalat Shabbat together at the very top of the page. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Naria, naria, letzor ishenu, nekadma fana betodaha. Naria, naria, letzor ishenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. And we'll turn back to Cantor Lauren as we turn to page 131, Shiru l'Adonai.
Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Sing unto God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God, and we'll all sing along. All the earth, a new song unto God. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash.
And we'll turn now to page 132, Or Zarua, the last Hebrew paragraph at the bottom of the page.
Or zarua l'tzadik, u'le'yishrei lev simcha. Or zarua l'tzadik, u'le'yishrei lev simcha. Simchu tzadikim Adonai, me'odu lezecher kodsho. Simchu tzadikim Adonai, me'odu lezecher kodsho. Or zarua l'tzadik, u'le'yishrei lev simcha. Or zarua l'tzadik, u'le'yishrei lev simcha.
And we'll turn now to page 134, Zamru l'Adonai.
Zamru l'Adonai bechinor b'kol zimra. Zamru l'Adonai bechinor b'kol zimra.
We turn now to page 135, Romamu, the last Hebrew paragraph in the middle of the page.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu le'ishachavu le'har kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu le'ishachavu le'har kodsho. Ki
And we'll turn now to page 138 for Lecha Dodi. And a reminder, we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor bezachor bedibur echad Ishmianu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shemu tiferet velitila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki hi mekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maaseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri kiva orek umiuri uri shir daberi kevod Adonai alaich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Bohi v'shalom ateret balam gam b'simecha u'etzolam toch emunei am segula. Boi chala Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. And I will turn it back to Cantor Lauren as we turn to page 140, Tzadik Katamar in Hebrew, right where it indents in the middle of the page. I think.
Tzadik Katamar yifrach kerez balvanon yizkeh shetulim mebet Adonai mechatrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenu meseva neshenim berananim yehu lehagir ki ashar Adonai tzuri velo avlatabo.
We'll turn now to page 144 for the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash meraba בעלמא דברכיותי והמליך מלכותי, מחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמרה במבורך לעולם עולמי יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ותרומם וינסה ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשא בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירה מעלמא ויאמרו amen.
We turn now to page 146 for the Baruch.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch et Adonai, Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai, Hamevorach, Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Nay, 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 nay,
We'll turn now to page 149. We'll read together in English the second reading down from the top of the page. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
ומעביר יום ומעביר לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המריב הרבים, אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכנו וקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך, לעולם לעולם בהם, כי הם חיינו, מאורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, מאהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
We turn now to page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם emet. Let's read together now on the top of page 157 in English. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn to Cantor Lauren and page 158, Mi Chamocha. And we'll turn now to page 161, the very top of the page, Hashkibenu.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Teshalom. Lehamidenu, Shomreinu Lechayim. Ufros Aleinu, Sukkot Shomecha. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Teshalom. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm.
And now we'll turn to page 162, the top of the page, Vishamru.
Veshamru אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
So in a moment, Cantor Lauren will help us to begin the Amidah together on page 164, and then we will continue silently. As always, please go at your own pace. And if you're standing, you can be seated at the end, or if you're more comfortable staying seated, please do so. And again, Cantor Lauren will start us off on 164, and then we'll go silently.
Adonai, שפתיי תפתח, ופי אגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Shalom,
turn now to page 371 to offer our Misha Berach, our prayer for healing. And as I am about to read the list of names of those that we know of in our community and connected to our community in need of healing, I'll invite you, if you have other names to share this evening and you'd like to share them publicly, or together, I should say, to please feel comfortable to add them to the chat or simply to hold them in your hearts and minds as we pray. So we'll begin by thinking of those, as I said, in our community and connected to our community in need of healing. Stu Pollock, Jane London, Phyllis Silver, Catherine Guarino, Emunah Chava, Sandra Furman, Morty Lynn, Raina Walsh, Deirdre Klein, Stephanie Skitt, Nancy DeMatte, Jean Ben Sadoun, Gloria Taradash, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Roz Brody, Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Marlise Silverberg, Louis Davidson, Susan Spruce, Bagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Bat Sarah, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Idol Basha Bat Yitzchak, Tzvi Menachem Ben Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Neil Elliott and Eileen Rosen, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Ben Sion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kasaf, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klotman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Tibia, Peretz Ben Yehuda, and Leah Bat Naomi. And we'll add, of course, all the names that have been shared in our chat and those that we're holding in our hearts as we turn back to Cantor Lauren, who will lead us in the Misha Berach on page 371. Thank you, Cantor Lauren. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So this week, as you can imagine, and I think that probably all of you have had this experience as well, that it's a week in which we have this holiday that we refer to as Thanksgiving. And while the holiday itself is certainly complicated and has a complicated history and all those things, the idea behind it, at least conceptually, is this idea of having a day in which our attention is really focused, at least conceivably, on this idea of thanks, of gratitude, of a sense of appreciation for the things that we have, for camaraderie, for family, for community, for all of these really truly incredible kinds of things. And every year we get to this time of year and it fills my heart. And I hope it does for you in most cases, in the sense that I see in all sorts of ways, both big and small, both public and private, various examples of this concept, this sort of amorphous concept of what it means to be grateful, what it means to be thankful, and how we as human beings are meant to express that sense or that emotion as it emerges. And then inevitably, sort of the next day comes and you're sort of back in the real world in some form or the other. And then there's always this thought that crosses my mind, which is sort of, why is this a temporal thing, right? Like, why is it that we can only kind of wrap our heads around the idea of being sort of overwhelmingly grateful and thankful for one day a year? And yes, there are other days of the year where that plays out, but you understand my point, right? That the idea behind it seems to be this sort of suggestion that we can only fit this kind of level of gratitude into small spaces, into finite terms, right? We don't talk about it as being a daily expectation. We talk about it as being part of our yearly experience where we are drawn to focus on these kinds of concepts and ideas. And so, I've kind of rolled this idea over and over in my head for years now and trying to figure out, what is that really all about? And I've come to something of a conclusion that I'll try to explain in a second is buttressed by one of our core prayers in the Shacharit morning service, which again, I'll explain in a second, but is the idea that basically gratitude, thanksgiving, however you want to phrase the idea of it, is not a naturally occurring phenomenon, right? It's not actually something that will automatically trigger in the way that, for example, we breathe, or that we sleep, or that we get hungry, or that we get thirsty, right? The automatic responses of our existence are a certain kind of thing, and gratitude is just not one of those things. So let me explain to you what I mean before you start to throw anything at me. Just, hear me out. And I'd like to explain it vis-a-vis actually one of our, really, as I said, sort of core prayers that is probably the most overlooked, largely because it is supposed to be literally the first prayer of the day. So the prayer in Hebrew says, Modeh, or if we are represent ourselves or understand ourselves to be feminine, then Modah, the way that Hebrew works, right? That we have two different representations based on gender. So either Modeh or Modah ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla, rabba emunatecha. Okay, which basically means Modeh, Modah, right? The word Todah probably sounds more familiar to you. Lehodot is this word for to give thanks. So we offer thanks to you, the ever-living sovereign, that you have restored my soul to me in mercy. How great is your trust. Okay, so the words itself, we could spend an hour just talking about this prayer, but it's a very important prayer. And as I usually point out in our morning services, that it's important that we begin our prayer service with gratitude and with thanks. So the only thing about it is that this prayer actually, while we find it in our Siddur, in our prayer book, and we often offer it only really at the beginning of our service, its intention is to be said actually as the first prayer the moment that you wake up in the morning. It's part of a series of prayers that we call Birkot HaShachar, the prayers of the dawn, the ones that are meant to be said as a person, as a human being, wakes up and starts to do the natural things that a human being does in the morning, that there are all manner of blessings that are meant to be done in a certain kind of order. And yet this is the first, okay? It's not a prayer for peace. It's not a prayer asking God for things, right? It's a actually rather simple prayer that says, Modeh ani, right? That I am just grateful, that I am thankful. So the interesting thing about it, and this is true actually of most of our Siddur, of our prayer books, is we oftentimes take for granted the idea that there is such a thing as a prayer book, or that our prayer book looks the same as the prayer book across town or across in New York City or in Israel. Right, the idea of a singular prayer book that all Jews are operating off of is actually doesn't even exist today, quite frankly, but really never existed. That there was never really a time in our history in which every Jewish person around the world was praying from the same prayer book. And in fact, the prayer books largely were compositions, and compositions oftentimes based on regionality, on particular minhagim or practices or customs that were unique to a particular part of the world. And sometimes in certain cases, and really the oldest extant Siddur that we have, I think, is Seder Rav Amram, which is like 8th century CE, that they're associated with actual particular people. And that oftentimes the particular person, the rabbi who constructed this particular prayer book for themselves, becomes then the basis for a number of additional prayer books that develop over time. So this prayer that we might assume has been there from day one, actually is relatively new in some ways. And that the oldest version of this appearing in a prayer book, if I'm not mistaken, is Rabbi Moshe ibn Yehuda Machir, who lived in Sfat in the northern part of Israel amongst the Kabbalists in the 16th century. And he adds these words, and he adds with a particular explanation of how it is that they're meant to be offered. And he says that when one arises, one should immediately say, I give thanks before you, living and eternal sovereign, for having restored my soul to me with compassion. Great is your faithfulness. Okay, and again, you can already tell slightly different translation. But the idea here, the key idea, is that one should say it immediately, right? The moment that you open your eyes, the moment you have consciousness of being awake, this is the prayer that you are meant to offer. So here lies the challenge. That the sort of understanding is that we're not supposed to offer prayers that involve God's name until after we've washed our hands. Okay, so there is actually a debate amongst the rabbis as to whether or not it's actually appropriate to say this prayer until you've actually gotten out of bed and washed your hands for the first time of the day. And our originating rabbi and most rabbis, most rabbinical authorities to this day have basically sided with the original idea, which is that because you don't say God's name specifically and instead refer euphemistically, right, Melech Chai v'Kayam, instead of saying Adonai, that it's okay to say this prayer. Okay, so that's a very interesting debate and it has all sorts of applications and it's for another time. But what's the key issue here and where does it relate to what I was saying before about gratitude not being naturally occurring, right? That we need a little bit of help in developing it. Is to say that this is a prayer that is so important, so essential, so cascading in its nature, that it must be the first thing that we think about before we even have a chance to think about anything else. Now, why might that be the case? And why is it, again, relating to this idea of why it's so hard to be grateful all the time instead of only in spits and starts? Is because, as I said, it's hard to be grateful. It's hard to focus on it because our mind almost immediately, as it starts going through its checklist when we wake up in the morning, is going to start focusing on all sorts of things that are not so positive, right? My body hurts. I have a crummy day at work coming up, right? My kids are screaming at me. I've disappointed somebody, right? Any number of things, fill in the gap. If you wake up in the morning and you don't have any of these feelings, kol hakavod to you. That's all I will say. Kol hakavod to you. But for the rest of us, that is part of our existence. So the logic of having this prayer of gratitude at the very, very beginning is because it gets into our mindset before all of the other things pile on. It doesn't mean that it puts all that stuff out of the way, right? Being grateful for your life doesn't mean that you're not supposed to complain or be upset or be frustrated or be angry. It simply means that it shouldn't be the primary mode of thinking, that our primary mode of thinking should be, let us begin every morning, no matter what it might be, with a sense of appreciation for the fact that our soul is within us, that we can breathe, that we can open our eyes, and that we can live. So think of it sort of along the lines of, it's going to sort of be a strange analogy, but if you ever known a chef or professional cook, they'll tell you the most important instrument in their life are their knives. And the only way that they can measure and be able to do the things that they do is to keep those knives sharpened and ready to go every single day. Not a day goes by where you don't pay attention to them. The same idea applies here, that we can't take a single day off from focusing on this idea of gratitude. We have to sharpen the wheel, so to speak, right? Sharpen on the wheel. We have to take every opportunity we can every single day to really build up that part of ourselves that allows the grateful mindset to be more dominant than the angry, frustrated, lacking, jealous other part of our brains that inevitably exists as well. And our tradition holds that everything, as I said, when I use the word cascading, right, ultimately flows from this concept. Our tradition says you cannot pray, you cannot do the things that we are expected to do on a daily basis with a heart that doesn't have a sense of gratitude and appreciation. And again, one of the beauties of prayer, and one of the things that I certainly, as I'm thinking about the fact that I have not led a service for our temple since last January, right, that I have realized that it's actually a very hard thing for me in some ways to not be part of the prayer experience going forward for the next month. And I realized as I got up this morning that part of that is because it's such an important part for me to remind myself to be grateful, right, to be appreciative, to be thankful for the things that I have, to focus less on the things that are not where I'd like them to be, either personally or in the world itself. And that our prayer services, our prayers themselves, are meant to help us. They're not meant to, to beat us over the head. Think of them as a helpful hand, as a way of focusing our attention when our attention is taken in other places. And while I don't hold out hope that every single day will be Thanksgiving in which everybody seems to be infinitely kinder and more understanding towards each other, I do think that if we can make an incremental change, right, get to the point in which each person is waking up in the morning with an orientation of gratitude, I think that there really could be something transformative, that instead of it being a once in a year or once in a while kind of experience, that it becomes something regular and that it becomes something in some ways that it's as close to breathing as we can get. So I hope that for each of you, one way or the other, you don't have to use this particular prayer, but try it. Try and experiment and see over the next week. Every time that you wake up, make the first thought in your mind a prayer of thanks, right? A prayer of gratitude. Everything else can come in right after that, and you can address it as it comes. But let's start with just that first idea and do it each and every day. And let's see what the change ultimately will result in. So with that, I wish you all a very heartfelt Shabbat Shalom. My gratitude for each and every one of you. And let's turn to page 586 in our prayer book, Aleinu L'Shabeach, at the very bottom of the page. Aleinu L'Shabeach, Ladon HaKol, Latet Gedula Leotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kegoye HaRatzot, Velo Samanu Kemishmechot Adama, Shelo Sam Chelkenu Kahem, Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamonaham, Vanachnu Korim Umishtachavim Umodim, Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. We're now on page 591. Ve'nemar ve'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Now invite those at home who are in mourning or observing yahrzeit who choose to do so to please rise as we first remember those in our community who have passed in recent months. Miles Ambrose, Nancy Fisher, Saul Fisher, Edwin Friedman, Sandra Friedman, Lucy Gladstone, Lois Herr, Philip Idone, Phyllis Katz, and Laura Kurz, Madge Judith Parcher, Steve Popkin, Vera Shaps, Norma Small, Marjorie Weinberg Berman, Ann Weiss, and Marvin Weiss. We also mark the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Alida Appel, Ronald Appel, Louis Bernstein, Shirley Cohen, Hank Coleman, Sarah Rubin Friedman, Tessie Heller, William Hearn, Abraham Horowitz, Raphael Kirschner, Leo Klopman, Rachel Lustig, Eleanor Lewis, Frida Rubin, Hilda Ruby, Jules Schneider, N. Bernard Silberg, Fanny Silverberg, Abraham Soroka, Yehuda Muti Waldman, Rebecca Wiener, and Milton Wiener. If you're thinking of anyone else this evening who you are remembering and you choose to do so, you may add their names to our chat as the mourners join me on page 598 for the mourners Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayichonu v'yomechonu v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, b'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam li'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav uyaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Let me put it on gallery view so I can see you. I can actually see you. And let me get my announcements here. And it's sort of strange doing the announcements when some of these things will be happening without me, but I trust that they will happen very, very well. And of course, the first thing where I still will be around is to join us for Shabbat services tomorrow morning, beginning at 10 o'clock. That'll be streamed live on our website, on YouTube, and on Facebook, and Torah study, which will begin at 12 o'clock on Zoom, and we welcome everybody to join with us. And we are going to also have on Sunday Ruth's wonderful book group, which will be meeting at 11 o'clock. Again, if you're interested in joining that group, you do have to contact Ruth directly. If you don't know how to do that, please let one of us know. Certainly you can contact Eileen in the office, and she'll be happy to make the connection. Also to note that Hebrew School will be back on Zoom on Monday at 4 o'clock. Social Justice Committee will have its regular virtual meeting at 5 o'clock, and the B'nai Mitzvah class on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Also, as we head towards the holiday of Hanukkah, we have a few things coming up that we're planning for you guys, one of which is a latke making class with Toby on Zoom at, that's Sunday, December 6th. We also have this is not Hanukkah related, but a very important discussion on the book Caste being led by our Social Justice Committee, which is Monday, December 7th at 7 p.m. And we also have a very large, wonderful, online-only Hebrew Hanukkah celebration planned, of which I think all the details are already out or coming out, which includes a wonderful skit being prepared by our unique, one-of-a-kind humor chavurah, of which we have many of our representatives on here. Put your hands up, humor chavurah, if you're on the group here. Very good. Okay, this is going to be one for the ages, as they say. Okay, Rock of Ages. We're looking forward to it. And even though I won't be leading it, you may see my face appear in places here and there. But we're really looking forward to a nice evening all together with a lot of different experiences for everybody. And I have something which I won't give away yet, but each night of Hanukkah, if you'd like to join me virtually to light your Chanukiot, just check into our website every night, including in the party. It'll be part of the party, but the other nights of the holiday, and hopefully you'll be able to get a nice experience out of that. And last, just a couple of words about, my time away, of which you'll get an email that also explains some of it. But our wonderful Cantor Lauren is going to be leading services on Friday nights without me. And as you can tell, she already basically does it all herself anyway. So it's not much of a motion. Oh, exactly. We can give a round of applause. But she's not going to have to do it entirely on her own. She's really made a wonderful arrangement for us, which is that her incredible boyfriend, second-year rabbinical student at HUC, Aaron, you want to wave? He is going to both be running all the technical stuff that I normally do, and he's going to have 2 of the 4 be giving the Devar Torah that evening, and he's preparing. He's going to do great. And Lauren and Aaron's friend Max, who is a rabbinical student in Anchorage, Alaska, if I remember correctly. Lauren, is that right? Is going to also help out for 2 of the 4 as well. So you're going to get a real nice glimpse into the future, as they say. And especially, as you know, our HUC connection, these are well-trained people. They're going to do a wonderful job. And on Saturday mornings, I arranged, actually, after going back and forth a few different things, that my dad is going to lead the services on Saturday mornings, and our Torah study is going to be led by a group of our lay leaders, including our women's Torah commentary at the beginning. So I promise I've left you in wonderful hands, and I really expect of you that you will be showing up in the same, if not greater numbers, to support our Cantor, certainly, in her work. And I know that you'll take very good care of the place while we're gone. And the last thing is that, God willing, obviously the world, you never know how things go, but we hope we'll have some good news to share with all of you sometime between now and when it happens. So keep an eye on your emails and all of that, and we'll certainly let you know. But Louis, her due date is the 2nd. So that's when it's all, really happening. But in any case, I will miss you guys terribly, but you'll be with us the whole way through. And as I said, just keep an eye out for an email that will give you some other pieces of instruction about, important other details for our community. But with that, I think we're going to now turn it back over to Cantor Lauren for a closing song, and then we'll do Kiddush. And as we've been doing the last few weeks, we're just going to stay on the Zoom. Anybody who wants to stay on for our Oneg, we'll be very happy to do so. So, Cantor Lauren, we'll turn back to you for a closing song. Okay, and if you have grape juice or wine at home and you'd like to join with me, we're on page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shavat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon inchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim. כי בנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך, באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. Amen. Okay, l'chaim, everybody. Shabbat shalom. I'm going to turn the stream